After decades of memories, are you wondering what's next? Selling your home is emotional, complex, and life-changing. And yet, you've taken the first step. Welcome to the official Bay Area Home Selling Workshop. You're among people just like you, ready for change, curious, and cautious. You're now part of a trusted team, guided by a lead with over 30 years of real estate experience, equipping you with everything from legal essentials to market-smart strategies. This isn't just another seminar. It's your launch pad to clarity, confidence, and the next chapter. We're so glad you're here. Let's begin.
All right, we get to do this again. So everybody who is here in person, thank you for listening to me again. Everybody online, our apologies for the late start, technical difficulties, and here we are. So, all right, let's hit it. I'm going to abbreviate my intro just a little bit here from before so certain people don't have to listen to it again. So what we're going to cover today, though, is basically dealing with the complications and hurdles of selling. Timing, preparing the home for the market, identifying professionals to work with, whether it's contractors, title, photographers, realtors, any of the above, the costs that are associated in the complications, and the tax consequences. So our real goal here is for knowledge, to provide knowledge to everybody, to help you grow, to learn better, to work better through the process, and be your Sherpa and guide you through the process, or the 5 Sherpas that we have in the room to guide you through the process. A little background on me: second generation, almost 30 years in the business, even though the video said over 30 years. We already ran that joke for the people that were live here, so online you don't get to hear that one. So we're going to hit that. We have a great team here that's built with 5 strong professionals, and we work on ethics, we work on discipline, and work on offering white glove service to everybody here. So that's how it should be in the real estate business. So I want to take all of that background and share it with everybody today, just for knowledge, just for input coming through. Just one request: if you find this informative and helpful, please share it with others. We do this every quarter, and we'll share those dates and times at the end. So here's what we're covering today. Number 1, the market. What's the market doing? Number 2, that buyer agent commission. Buyers have to pay commissions. Buy or sell first, the tax benefits and consequences, the 3 levels of home prep and the improvements that impact that the most, the importance of disclosures and inspections. We're going to put a lot of stress on that. Effective marketing, and what's the best time of the year to sell. So that's going to be our breakdown. So we are going to jump right into it as we go forward and hit the Bay Area market trends. Everything? Yeah.
There's some feedback.
There's a feedback online? Okay. For the online people, hopefully that's a little bit better on the feedback. So thanks for sharing that. We're going to make all of this work out really well. So, all right. So let's start with the Bay Area market trends and what's happening. And I'm going to touch a little bit nationally because that's what we're seeing in the media. And the question that we're really running into is the market correcting? Is it crashing? Do we have doom and gloom on the horizon? Or is it all just media? So I'm going to start with nationally. Nationally, inventory is rising. Interest rates are still high. They haven't really come down much. They've come down a little bit last couple of weeks. And a lot of markets are shifting in favor of the buyers nationally. So, and sellers are starting to have to compete by lowering their prices, right, and offering incentives, right, or making concessions coming into there. That's what we're seeing nationally. So in certain areas, it's being impacted more than others, right, coming through. Locally in Silicon Valley, this is the part, this is where we first got cut off. So now we're not on rewind anymore. So locally in Silicon Valley, it's really interesting because this is the time of the year that our inventory is usually the highest. Right now, at this point in June, July, you see the most homes on the market. We have less homes on the market now than we had 2 months ago. So inventory is lower, it's held down, right, usually when we're seeing that peak. Ending sales are up, not down. That's the other thing that we're running into right now locally. Absorption rates are healthy. Absorption rate is the percentage of homes that are selling versus how many are on the market. So right now it's 48% single family homes, which is about 1 out of every 2. And it's 32% for condos and townhomes, which is 1 out of every 3, right? Those are balanced market numbers. It's normal. What's happening here in Silicon Valley, people are used to house on the market. In 3 days, we have 97 offers, and we sell for $900,000 for the asking price, right? This is normal, and people aren't used to normal. And so when they see this, they're like, oh, what's going on? So I hit into those condos and townhomes. The one thing I want to stress, too, there's a big difference between 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, and 3 bedrooms, but 1 bedrooms having the lowest absorption rate. Bedrooms highest. All right. Prices. Okay, says too, are prices going down? Are they falling? So nationally, we are seeing a dip. There's definitely a dip in prices nationally. We're seeing that out there. And they're either dipping or staying flat. We're seeing that. And again, it depends what area you're going to, right? A perfect example to use is Florida. Prices are dipping pretty substantially. So, and they're taking the run of everything. Insurance costs, the run up, you take areas like Austin as another one. Austin and Florida are two. Where did people move to, right, during the pandemic, and where do they overpay, right? And so certain areas, like if you're coming from our area and you go by in Austin, Texas, well, from our area, it inflated the prices, right? And so you started to see some of that. So that was a piece that we had. So we're seeing some of that. But again, this is a normal correction. This isn't a hard crash or a fall. Just what happens. Locally, June's average sales price, this was the one I was really looking for because May was when we were having the most overall impact from tariffs and talk about the fight with interest rates and all that kind of stuff. So when we saw June's prices, that was what I was really paying attention to see what was happening. So we ended up determining when June's prices came out, is June's average sales price was the same as May. So the prices held. And that's one of the things that we're paying attention to. And year over year, and year to date, in both aspects, prices are actually up. So we're seeing steady sales, and we're seeing consistent pricing and a hold on the pricing. Now, those are the factors we want to see. So the factors that are really going on, more sellers are entering the market. That's why the absorption rate, like especially in like Silicon Valley, we were to go 2-3 years ago, our absorption rate was like 75, 80%, right? The difference now is that there's more sellers, which also means sellers are getting more comfortable to move to the next piece. Because a couple of years ago, home sellers weren't moving because they had 3% interest rates and they want to have to go pay the enormous route on the other side. So that is the difference we're seeing. This is something that's also really interesting. The buyer demand is really strong. And that's the part that people aren't paying attention to. Mortgage applications are up 20% last year. And we're actually at 12 weeks in a row that mortgage applications are up double digits over last year. So we're seeing a big piece. That's going to be a precursor of what's happening 60 to 90 days, right? Because people are going through the mortgage application process. Inventory is still below pre-pandemic levels. Mortgage delinquencies are low. They're just above 4%, which is such a minuscule number. And that's a clear sign of no crash. So the big part that we're going to see with a crash, or what causes a big dip in prices, are when mortgage delinquencies go way up. People can't afford to stay in their home. They're having problems. That's when we see the problem. You don't see any signs of it at all. The other thing that we're going to go to, if we just touch on the economy, it's been resilient through all of this stuff that's happened, even though it's been a little bit wild this year. It's still been resilient. The S&P 500's up over 5% year to date. Unemployment in the Bay Area is just at 3.6%. And while there's been tech layoffs that have been made, and that's in the headlines all over the place, demand for AI, cybersecurity, software engineering, those are really strong. So we're still seeing those parts this year. So here's the big picture. We're coming down here. Consumer sentiment is low, and it's due to uncertainty, not fundamental. That's the big piece that we're seeing. Or what the thought process is and the emotional reaction than it is what we're actually seeing out there. So inflation stable, our market's solid, mortgage distress is minimal to non-existent, and all of this bases out to, and again, stressing that I've done this for almost 3 decades now, this is a normalization, not a meltdown. And this is what we see here in the local market. What I can say in the Silicon Valley market, this is what we see over the years. See this. That's usually what we see. So we're in this right now. So, right. As a home seller, and this is the question, what do you do as a home seller, right? We're not going to talk about what to do as a buyer because this isn't for them today. This is for a home seller. So what do you do as a seller? If your home is well presented, it's well priced, it's still going to do well. So you might not sell in 2 days. It might take a little more patience to sell, right? But if you're thinking of selling, you're still in a strong position, especially if you're sitting in low rate financing, got plenty of equity. Just know the sales data before you go on the market, right? Pay attention to what the prices are. Pay attention to what's happening in the neighborhood, right? And know those trends before jumping in. Most importantly, pay attention to the homes that are pending, because those are telling the biggest story, right? If you're watching something that closed 6 months ago, last year, that means nothing. So you really have to pay attention to what's pending right now and look at them. Right? If you're going to say case by case, how does my home compare to those homes? Go take a look at the ones that are pending, right? Even if it's at least online, but if you can go inside them, check them out, see what's there. So I want to show a couple slides here to bring some of this into perspective.
So this is what we're seeing for active and pending. Here's what I've been talking about. So if you look at, the left side over there, this is for single family homes, this particular one right here. You look on the left side, those are the number of homes that are active. Look at that, the July 4th. Now, July 4th week is always weird. Holiday weeks are always weird. So because less buyers, less sellers, people are doing other stuff besides selling a house, right? So look at this, you've got 1,296 homes active on the 4th, right? Coming down from 1415, 1438, 1417. You're seeing a trend. We're staying in there. You can go back to the past 6 months, right? And there you're going to see, like when you see January at 477, that is always the lowest number of the year every single time. So coming out, that's where you're going to see the lowest inventory coming in January. And then when you see there that buildup that goes until June, that's normal. That's a sign of a seasonal trend. What we see. When you come over to the right side, these are going to be our pendings. Now notice something that's really, really important there. They're consistent. And this is another piece where we're talking about our buyers running away from the market. They're not. They're still here. The same number of sales. It's really interesting. If you go back year over past years, you don't see this reflected because it's on the bottom of the chart. But the number of pending sales this past week are exactly the same as this time last year, and exactly the same as this time the year before. So while there's a different narrative being told about this market, the same number of homes are selling. So that was selling out there before. That is the story we're seeing on the housing side. Here's the story that we're seeing on the townhome and condo side. So same kind of thing. Inventory stayed pretty consistent. It's come down. We had that buildup that came up through there. And then the pending sales, that stayed consistent. Now, we did have a little run up there at the beginning of June. So they hit a little bit up there, which was good to see. Then pendings have kind of, settled down. But again, it's the same thing that we've seen. Absorption rates are staying pretty solid, except for when we come back down there, January, February, March. You see that absorption rate on the right side being higher. Again, that's all relative due to no inventory. Right? If there's not enough inventory to have good sales, the numbers are going to be skewed because more homes are percentage-wise selling, even though there's less sales. So it stayed consistent, and we haven't seen that fall off. That's a big piece that I wanted to share when it comes to that. So as a seller, basics on there, it's not no need to panic. It's not a time to panic. So I mean, maybe if I owned prime property in Florida, I would be super happy right now. But outside of that, it's not really a time to panic. But it is a time to have realistic expectations. So, and not to be able to go on and say, I'm going to get 37 offers in 3 days. I'll put a precursor to that. If you own a home in Palo Alto, it could still happen. And we're still seeing that happen. So there's certain areas that are still going, which again is a sign that there is not a market correction if people are still writing 30 offers on one single home in Palo Alto, right? So underlying housing dynamics are really strong. Really, the hurdle that we have for people right now is confidence. That really is the hurdle because there's so much going on and so many unknowns. People are like, I don't know what to do right now. So I don't know what's going to happen. And that's where we see that thing. But even with that, we see those numbers staying consistent. And we get to that point that there's an interest rate change, we're going to see a flood of buyers at that time. And we already saw that with mortgage applications, right? So when that happens, the question is, when is it going to happen? It might not happen for a while. It might not happen for 6 months. It might not happen for a year. You don't know. Trying to predict interest rate changes, the fool's errand. So even lenders can't do it. Even lending experts can't do it. So let's just kind of ride with what's happening because they're a reaction to what's happening out there right now. So we'll see what happens there. There's a story that I wanted to sell. I'm going to sell this story, but I'm going to tell the story. So that's what happens when you're in sales. They sell. So this one was great because this was
this is a really powerful story that came through. And this was this year. And this was right when we were seeing that first run of the tariffs that came in, and everybody's like panic and reaction to everything out there. So we had clients, Chris and Stephanie, who were in a 2-bedroom townhouse in Cupertino, and their house on the market. Everything was slowing down. Like literally, that was like a week or 2 weeks after everything hit. And so we went out and you just saw like silence, right? People were quiet. Went literally from one weekend of 30 people in an open house to the next weekend of 5 people in an open house, right? So you saw that change. And so we were watching other people around not even just the community, but around the area panicking, right? And being like, holy cow, I've got to take a huge price cut on my house, or I've got to do this. Chris and Stephanie came on the market, received an offer the first week they were on the market. Right? That was not a great offer. So we countered them back. Hey, here's where we're at. We know the number that we want. We were looking at all the underlying stats, and we advised them, don't panic, right? You don't need to accept this offer. We're going to be fine. And so we stayed on the market for a couple more weeks, kept doing the marketing that gets done, kept going out there, people kept coming in. Those same buyers came back 2 weeks later, ended up writing the offer that got the house. And so at that point in time, it was like, okay, they stepped up. They still wanted the house, right? They knew where it was, and we weren't showing the dynamics that things were crashing. So they came in and they actually ended up selling for higher than what they thought they were going to sell for in the first place, which worked out really well. So patience and smart, get the data, attention, panic. So there was a story, ironically, there's one more story here. Ironically, that same house, when they bought it, we were doing the open house. My son and I were doing the open house, and there was another open house in the neighborhood. And it was the slowdown market of like 2018. Things were slowing down right around then. So, they had been on the market for like 3 weeks. And there's another very similar place and size and everything just down the street for the market. And people were coming into the open house and going, holy cow, the market's crashing. Like, the market's not crashing. So, here's the data, here's what's going on. This conversation with agents all the time too. Here's the data and here's what's going on. And the realtor that was hosting the open house was in the open house representing her sellers, telling people that the market was crashing. I mean, there's 2 things wrong with that. But number one, that was a piece. So sure enough, it didn't. It held up. And man, if you would have bought a house in 2018 versus now, you would have been very happy that you did. It worked out very well. So again, it's just understanding what's going on with the market and what the underlying fundamentals are critical. So, and then we just put one up on La Jolla before I jump into the next topic of buyers commissions. We just put one up on La Jolla right on the border of Willow Glen and Campbell and the Dry Creek area, so over by Door Park. You know where that is. So we put a single family home on the market there. Within 1 week, we sold it for $125,000 over the asking price, while other homes in the neighborhood weren't selling. And just to specify, our price was in line with the other homes. It wasn't like we sold it to get it sold. It stayed in line. So a lot of it is strategy, how you do things, how you present things, what's the story you're telling online. So let me hit into this next piece. Thank you for questioning. I'll take any questions afterwards too that anybody wants to ask. So, but this is the big one, is the buyer's commission. And so this is, I bring this up because this is relevant to you as homeowners and sellers, right? As to what's there, because a lot of the piece that I hear right now is, do I have to pay the buyer's commission as a seller? Because standard practice for years has been the seller pays their agent a percentage, and part of that percentage is shared with the buyer's agent. And how this changed over time was they're on the multiple listing service, which is where the listings are all put on when they're up for sale. There's a field that says how much commission the seller is sharing with the buyer's agent, right? So over time, all this came into a lawsuit. because they were calling it price fixing. Eventually said, we can no longer have that field because by putting a number there, we're saying this is a standard price. Everything's negotiable. Right. And so that was taken away. No longer out there. So now there's no advertisement of that. There cannot be any advertisement of it. And the rule now is just like when a homeowner signs a contract, sell their house, the home buyer has to sign a contract. And that contract they sign says, hey, I owe you this as a buyer's agent, right, when you close. Now, what happens in these processes is it's all just part of the negotiation. So when somebody writes an offer and brings something to you, that offer will say, Ms. Seller, I would like you to contribute a certain percentage of your proceeds to pay for the buyer's agent. Right? So that comes through there. So it's always going to work out one way or the other. It always comes in. If you're not offering buyer's commission, then it costs the buyers more. This is really where the key comes into play. The lenders have not figured out a way yet to roll the buyer's commission cost into the loan. So what that means is when a buyer buys a house now, on top of their down payment, on top of their closing costs, they're also going to have to take on funds to pay for the buyer's agent, right? That whole piece. So that limits their affordability, that limits how much they can actually pay for the house, and it limits their desirability as far as costs go, right? So one of the things that we've done structurally and strategy-wise is to offer to cooperate, but that's part of the negotiation, right? So you're going to build it into that sales price. So it's the same thing. The cost is going to come out the same, right? To whoever you're going to do it, but you're going to make sure that if you do that and you contribute, it's always, again, what you choose to do. If you contribute to that buyer side, it allows them to qualify more, it allows them to pay for more. So it's basically like, if I'm going to include that 2.5%, 3%, 2%, whatever it is on the other side, here's what my sales price is. Right. And then it rolls into there. So just think of it as a negotiation as it goes through the process. We haven't really seen it change anything. So, I mean, there's a couple instances here or there. We haven't seen it change anything. The thing we've seen is sometimes when there's more than one offer in a house, the offer that the buyer sends says, hey, I will pay for the buyer's commission, the buyer will, right? And so you'll see some of that. So it, again, it hasn't really changed anything. It's just an option whether to cooperate or not cooperate. And again, it's just strategy, negotiation strategy. It works out better for you either way, and that's the way that you go. So and that's the importance of having the right negotiation on that side. So hopefully that makes sense. Let's see. That's all I want to say about that. Let's go to buy or sell first options. I'm coming through here. I'm going to have to listen to me for a little bit more, and then I'm going to bring Shannon up here so we can take a break. Keep all of you get that out there. All right. Buy or sell first. The pros and cons. It really comes down to convenience versus options. That's really what all of it is. So is to go through there. So buying first, coming through the process, just means that you're generally going to have to qualify for the house that you're going to purchase while you still own your house. Right. There's different options out there. There's lenders that can offer anything from bridge loans to, I can't remember what the name of the loan is. If somebody remembers out there, it's like a residency first. I can't remember what the name of that loan is, but yes, thank you. Departing residence loan, farmhouse to the rescue. All right, so there's a departing residence loan as well. So, so there's options that they have out there. They have various costs to what it is. The convenience of that is, at your new home, you don't have to stress, off you go. Selling first is more putting things in line to understand things more. I have more options, right? Because if you're selling first, you know what you sold for. You know how much money that you have. You know what you've netted. So you know what you can allocate towards the next process. That's the definite pro to that, is having that security. Right? The con to it is, where do I live? What do I do if I don't find a house before I close? Can I get a rent back? Right? Those are some of the processes. All of it always works out. It's just your own personal taste as to what you want to do and how you want to do it. But there's avenues for both, and we have lenders that can do both. But just look at it this way. If you're buying first, you have the convenience of, I bought my house, I moved in, I can sell my house. If you're selling first, you have I sold my house, I know how much I'm making, I know how much I can spend going on to the next one. So those are really the masters of it. Now, all of us here in this room, all the agents here in this room, sit down and explain that for an hour, go through all of those pieces that are on there, but there's all moving parts. They all work to there. I just want to make it quick and easy for you there. All right. Let's go to tax benefits. Because everybody wants to know, again, how much is it going to cost? So as we're coming through there. So there's, when I talk about tax benefits, even though I've dealt with them forever, I own my own properties. I've sold I don't know how many properties at this point in time, and we deal with these questions all the time. I have to say, I am not an accountant. So make sure that you talk to an accountant for the proper advice. I'll tell you what I know coming through the process. So the first ones I'm going to hit in are Propositions 19, 60, and 90. If you're familiar with those are all property taxes. So that's what those all around to. So Proposition 60 was the same county. So when that came out, it basically said that, hey, if you own a property in Santa Clara County and you sell the property and you buy another property for that same price or less, you get to keep your property tax. So if your property taxes were $10,000 at that time and you buy something different, even though your price went up and that price is higher, you get to keep the $10,000 tax base, assuming you're 55 or over, right? That would be the next piece. I qualify for that now. Isn't that great? So that's the other one there. Shannon's laughing at me. All right, Proposition 90. I always got to get an age joke or a height joke. They're going to all make their way in there. So Proposition 90, we hit into there. This became the state level. So now the same thing would happen throughout the state as long as that county cooperated. So when it started, it was like 20-something counties in the state would do it. So you could move from Santa Clara County to San Diego County, right, and keep your property tax base despite the purchase price as long as it was less than what you sold for, right, coming through there. So it started dwindling down to where it hit like 13 counties and then 11 counties, and it was like, well, nobody really wants to take the hit on property taxes in a different county from somebody else. So that was a challenge for people, and it started really being ineffective. So Proposition 19 was passed. That's the last one. That's the all-encompassing master of anywhere. Here in California, Proposition 19 is anywhere in the state now. It doesn't matter. So as long as you buy in the state, you get to keep your property tax base, assuming, again, you purchase that price or lower. Now, there are a couple things that they did as well. If you purchase higher, then you'll get your tax base for that value that you had before, and they'll charge you the extra for the difference. Right? So if you sold at 1.6 and you bought at 2 million, but your property taxes were 7,000 on your 1.6, still get the 7,000. That $400,000 difference is going to be taxed at that rate. So that'll go on top of it. So that's the piece that you'll get. The other thing that they did is they opened it up as well. So it's not just 55 and over. It's for severely disabled and victims of wildfires and natural disasters. Like in LA, when they had the horrific fires and all those houses burned down, they get to keep their property. So even they did that, when they build something new or go into something new, they'll get to keep that going forward. So that's the proposition. Those all make sense? There's so much fun. All right, thanks for listening to this part. So the capital gains. This is one that there's so many questions with. People confuse capital gains with 1031s. They're completely two different things. Capital gains are for your personal private residence only. 1031 exchange, if you hear that out there, is for your income property only, right? That's it. So it has to be a personal residence that you're filing your taxes out of for capital gains. If it's an income property that you're gaining rent out of and it's not your personal residence, you won't get capital gains protection. You get a 1031 exchange, which is a deferred tax basis. And I'm happy to talk about that with anybody outside of this for income property, but I want to focus on principal right now. So capital gains, there's two marks as it stands right now. There's a lot of stuff going on about changing it. So, but what they are right now are two numbers to remember: 250,000, 500,000. 250,000 for an individual homeowner, 500,000 for a couple, right? Or a married couple, or a legally married or identified couple, right? So that's the 500,000 that caps into there. So how that's calculated, which is the other part that's important, I'm gonna have to do a slide to put the calculation up. I think that would be cool. So I'm coming through there. Yeah. how it's calculated is the purchase price of your home, whatever you purchased it for, plus whatever you've done to the house as far as upgrades go, right? You remodeled your kitchen, right? You added on a room, you changed the roof, you did termite repairs, right? Whatever it is, all of that starts building up on top of that purchase price you had. And whatever it costs you to sell the home, you had to get inspection, you had to pay for a realtor, you had to pay title fees, you had to pay the county and city transfer taxes, right? That all builds on top of there as well. So you've got your purchase price, any improvements that you've done to the house, city receipts, and on top of that, any cost of sale to the sell your house. So you bought your house for $1 million and you did $500,000 for cost of sale and updates. Your basis is now 1.5 million. And then what's going to happen is anything you sell over that, that's going to be the capital gains. So your protection comes in. The other one that's really important is the step-up value. And step-up value is always sensitive to talk about because it deals with somebody's spouse passing away, right? So, but on step-up value, something like that happens when there's a married couple or a legally recognized married couple that own a house together, and one of them passes away. The value basis of that house is stepped up to the date of significant others passing. So if they bought the house in like 1990, right, and one of them passed away in 2020, they now look at the basis for capital gains purposes as 2020. That price, even if they bought it for $300,000 and that's worth $2 million, they get a $2 million protection on capital gains. It's evaluated price by an appraiser. No, not the county appraiser. So an individual appraiser comes in, does an appraisal, that appraisal is given to your accountant. That's the person. Now, don't get any sneaky ideas about houses that you don't like to bring that value up. So, so that is the.
You live in Palo Alto.
Unless you live in Palo Alto, very well played. So that's awesome. So those are about tax benefits. Again, I'm happy. I could talk about this for an hour in and of itself. So we'll jump out of that, and I am going to bring Shannon up here. Talk about
Essential home preparation tips, how to get the best return.
Yeah, and I didn't really know how to fix it other than putting it up as high as you can. Hopefully that's better for the people online. Okay, so do you want to make the thing a little smaller?
Yes.
Okay. So when we're meeting with our sellers, usually the first initial consult, we sit down and we strategize, talk about their goals, their needs, and really what they want the end result to be. And so we come down to 3 different levels of progress. And the first one is as it is, meaning we're working with a time crunch maybe, don't have a whole lot of extra money and time to spend on the house, putting repairs and prep. So it's really just getting a nice deep cleaning, getting it cleaned out, decluttered, and just a fresh slate for the next buyer that moves in, but we're not doing much work other than cleaning. The mid-range is the next level, and that's going to be really just the essential things to do to put it in its best light, but not do a full-blown remodel. So we're doing things like replacing the floors, changing the walls, changing out light fixtures, doorknob handles, maybe changing all the light bulbs so they all are the same LED and not mismatching colors. And those are going to be the biggest bang for your buck as far as the big difference in feel for somebody when they walk in without spending $100,000. And then we have the full-blown remodel. So if you have the time and you have the money to spend up to maybe 6 weeks, 2 months for a full remodel, and you're going to get a higher price and it makes more sense to do a full-blown remodel than the other 2 options, you can definitely do that. We've got the people to refer, but that's going to be for people who have the extra time and have the extra money to spend on the full-blown remodels. And everybody's in a different situation. No option is better than the next, just depends on her personal goals, and we're okay with any of them. As is versus mid-range versus full remodel. Any questions?
We can talk longer.
Sorry, we have a lot of questions.
Yes. On the third option, which is the full glow, if you already have a home that's rather high in price, then would you still recommend spending a lot of money if the return on investment there versus if you have a much older home, and by much older I mean 50 years or so?
It depends on your goals and what net price you really want to aim for at the end. So what we do to help people decide what might be the best option for them is what we call net sheets. So when we meet with a seller, we'll say, here's a net sheet with what you can expect if you sell as is. And we comp the properties that are similar to the condition that your home is just as it is, doing nothing. And then we'll do a net sheet for a mid-range. And we'll comp the home with things that are maybe a little bit more, in line, upgraded wise. And then we'll comp the home with things that are completely redone, modern and recent. And then when you look at those net sheets, you can see from what the cost differences are, what values might be the best fit for your situation, net price, what you'll walk away with. Does that make sense?
It does. My question was more about, based on your experience, do you think that third option makes sense in most cases, or not really for some of the higher end homes? Because, buyers will come in and they'll want to do their dream things anyway.
It's completely case by case. It really, there's no overlapping answer to that, because it depends on, where is that house on the street, right? What's the location there? What's the layout of that house? What's all the comparables like? All of those. So it's a great question, but it really comes down to sitting down and saying, here are all the numbers and here's the bottom line. So if you don't do anything here, and there's variances. Sometimes it makes complete sense to do everything. And it's neighborhood dependent as well, right? And sometimes it doesn't make sense to do anything.
Like with Cambridge, we had a townhome listing in Cupertino. It made more sense. He actually netted more money by doing a mid-range remodel rather than doing a full-blown remodel because of the cost and the time associated with the full-blown remodel. So it's just case by case.
Yeah, and in a case like that too, which is a perfect, come right to you, Jack.
In a case like that Shannon mentioned, in that particular neighborhood, there was a home on the market that sold for $150,000 more at the same time, same floor plan. He netted more money than if he would have sold for that price and did the work. And that was a comparison, because that house was completely done and all of the work was done, and he would have had time and money, right? You would have had to go through the 3 or 4 months to do that. 90 years old, he didn't really have the patience or the need to want to do that. He's like, this makes sense. This is my price point. And he ended up netting more than he would have done if he did the work.
Those net sheets are really helpful to share, so you can actually see the numbers. And then, of course, there's a price that we set, like a range of what we think we can get you when we meet. And then there's, if you're doing work 3 months later, the prices could change up or down. So that time is a wild card sometimes.
Yeah.
Exactly. Awesome. Shannon, thank you. Back up here in a second. Jack, thank you.
Thank you. On the same question, kind of. Have you seen your experience doing updates to the house at any of those 3 levels?
Yeah.
Does it depend on the house, on its value and location?
Yeah.
In some cases, investing $100,000 in renovation, cleaning, whatever, may not bring the selling price over that $100,000. But have you seen in some cases that investing the money just to making the house more appealing, meaning selling much faster, getting more offers, is also going to work, as opposed to having pure financial benefits?
Yes. Yeah, the answer is yes, because to your point, for people online didn't hear, does it make sense to do the upgrades for the sake of a faster sale and a larger audience, basically? And so have a larger audience. And I think that's really is the piece, because most people don't want to have to do work, right? Unless it's their intention to come into a property and put their own flavor into it, right? Most of them hey, I just want to move in and live in my house and, what I want. A lot of them don't even know how to deal with massive remodels and to go through that, or what level it takes, or the commitment that it takes. So answer is yes, it comes through. You'll have a larger audience that comes around, Where you have that is you're going to have more particular people that are going to come in. The one thing that I would say when you do that and you have a house that's really nice and it's styled in, you have to pay attention to the little details at that point, because the little details start to come out. If there's stuff that wasn't touched, people are like, but this is so nice. My God, why didn't they do this? Right? And that becomes more particular. So that piece is important there. The audience changes are those houses that, 1950s, grandma's owned the house forever and hasn't done anything to the house, and people come in, they come in with the intention of having to redo everything, knowing that having to redo. There are exceptions where people will, a first-time home buyer might buy that house so they can get into that particular neighborhood, right, and deal with that and do their work over time. Right? Sometimes that'll happen, but most of the time, a house that's not fixed up, you're going to run into an investor coming in. It's going to come in and do the work themselves and then put it back on the market or turn it into a rental or something like that, right? Or you have them, we've worked with clients like this. We have one right now, coincidentally, in Palo Alto that's looking to buy a house that they can do work to, right? So coming through that process. So thank you for that question. Those are both great questions. I love that. All right. The preparation tips is interesting. Those three levels and what Shannon talked about. We had one that we just talked about in Dry Creek, Campbell Willow Glen area on La Jolla that sold for $125,000 over the asking price. That was a house that was very original coming through. And the decision was we went down and the owner had a reverse mortgage. On top of that, she has cost building every month, right? So we have to take that into factor fixing stuff up. We sat down with the three net sheets and said, hey, if you don't do anything and we put the house on the market right now, this is the results that you'll probably get, right? If we do everything, this is what it's going to cost you. This is how long it's going to take, right? And here's the results that we're probably going to get. And if you go mid-range, here's where we're at. So we chose to go mid-range, and it worked out really well. And in that case, because everything needed to be done to that house, we're talking 4 to 5 months, right? As far as time frame goes, and $200,000, right, to go through that whole process and go everything. So it worked out very, very well. I'm in the process, but it always varies. So those are great pieces, which is why it's important to have somebody sit down and go through all of those options, right? Decide which route is best for you. All right. The other thing that I want to hit in before we go any more into that is which of those home improvements maximize interest? What is it that people come in that they're willing to pay more for? Right. So the most cost effective, I'm just going to start with that, and Shannon hit this, is that mid-range, which is, paint, flooring, countertops, things like that. That's the most cost effective to kind of, there's a phrase out there called lipstick on a pig. So that's used all the time. Yeah, I know, right? But that's the phrase that's common out there. So there is that one. So that is the process for there. It helps. It makes things easier for people. And again, some people are able to get into a house at a price that they couldn't get into that's all fixed up in a neighborhood, right, coming through there. And they're not losing money on it. Curb appeal is often underlooked, but so important. And what somebody sees when they first come up to your house oftentimes decides whether they're even going to walk into your house. And so, I had a conversation with somebody I know personally who has a stunningly beautiful house and an incredible, park-like backyard, but doesn't take care of the front of the house, right? So you see the front of the house and you see the curb appeal and you're like, oh, great. So, and then you go in the house and you're like, wow, this is beautiful, right? It's stunning. So people wouldn't know that. But if you have that curb appeal, that brings them in. So paying attention to what the curb appeal is critical, just to get them in. Kitchen, we're going to go right into kitchen then. Kitchen is massive. Everybody wants a kitchen. Kitchens are most expensive. The one thing that home buyers look at is cost. So when they see a kitchen, they tend to exaggerate costs, right? So if they see a kitchen that's not done, they're going to go, holy cow, this is going to cost me like $150,000 or $200,000 to do this. And so that comes into their negotiation, right? They think about that when they put that in there. Bathrooms are next, with the primary bathroom being number one, because the person paying for the house wants the nicest bathroom, right? So that's going to be number one. That's usually not the case that are doing that. Right. The key factor to remember when you're choosing what improvements to maximize is no matter what neighborhood you're in, no matter what your house is or what the condition is, you will always be compared to your competition on the market. Always. So they're always going to look at the other house next to yours and say, well, their kitchen is done and yours isn't. Right? So I'm going to pay a difference to those houses, or I'm going to buy that house first, right, before it goes on the market. Things like that. So so watch that for active and sold. They're going to look at this. And again, all of this is going to vary house by house. Right? Every house is a different story. Every neighborhood is a different story. So really, there is no there's no Zillow answer to be able to say this is exactly what to do or what the answer is. So one of the stories that I wanted to share, carry on and across from that, is this one right here. This is a great story. Barry Wells, he had a home for sale with us next to the mountains down in Santa Teresa, and he was getting contacted and reaching out to people that are saying, hey, we'll buy your house. You know, we've seen the commercials, right? We'll buy your house all cash, right? So we'll go through here. We'll, open doors and other programs similar like that, right? Companies like that. So he was getting these offers for his house. So to come through, and his ex-wife, who is a former client of mine as well, and still we stay in contact. He goes, well, you need to talk to Keith and his team before you accept one of those offers, and at least talk, see what's going on there. So we saw his house. It was in dire condition. He did not have the funds or the desire to do anything to the house. The house was like missing bathroom doors. There was no stove. The backyard was like this tall. It was all just that kind of scenario. So, and he was moving out of the area, and he was just like, I can't deal with any of this. I don't have the ability to do with any of this. This house is my entire retirement. He was starting to have health problems. Stuff. He goes, all I have is what's in this house. So, and so the prices that came in, if you saw here, was pretty amazing. So he listen, here's how we do this. Right? We'll cut back your yard. So couldn't say mow the yard. We'd cut back the yard. So we'll cut back the yard, clean up some stuff inside. We'll get rid of some of your stuff in the house. And we'll put it on the market and get the exposure, because most times they don't realize, like, these people that buy off market, they build in like 10 to 15% under market value to pay for your house, right? And the prices that you have to do, I think he ended up investing $5,000 maybe to his house, maybe less, to put into the house. He put it on the market, sold in 5 days. We had like 20 something offers on it. So, and it sold for $250,000 more than what he was offered by these companies to buy it off market. And it took him an extra 4 weeks to do that, to make that money. And I tell you, doing this business and what I do to this day, the power of feeling that with an individual, and you sit down with them and they get that, and then he looks at you and he goes, this changes my life. And that still brings me tingles as I say that. I love that feeling. So it still brings those tingles. To be able to do that makes such a difference. And again, it was just wedging them against you. There were still a bunch of investors. There were still a bunch of flippers that came in. The people that ended up buying it, they loved the neighborhood. They were going to do a massive remodel to the house. And so we were able to find that person, come in and jump through theirs. So so those are great pieces of great stories, and they happen all the time. So exposure is everything. So I love feeling that. When I have another one, but for time's sake, I'm not going to share that one. It's already at 11 o'clock. I'm going to hit this guy right here, which is the importance of disclosures and inspections. I'm only going to spend a couple minutes on this, but I don't want that to be confused for the importance of it, because this may be one of the most important things that we talk about. It's definitely one of the most important things down the road for you as a home seller and a homeowner. So the first thing that disclosures and inspections do, disclosures are basically everything that you know about the house. So you fill out these forms and you say, hey, I had a plumbing leak at one time and it was fixed up. Here's the upgrades that I've done to the house. Here's how old the roof is. Things like that, right? This is all the stuff that goes through there. So, and then the inspections is, it's interesting, in our area here in the Bay Area, it's common practice to do inspections before you put your home on the market. So, and the reason that that's done here is because our environment is so different than most of the nation, where people come in and write offers with no contingencies. And if somebody's writing an offer with no contingencies and you don't have inspections, believe it or not, as a seller, you have liability issues. So, because there's things that were not disclosed to them as they came in and waived everything. Now, there's a fault by the buyer and the advice to do that right at the same time, but it still leaves you open. So, it protects you to have all that stuff out there. We'll know everything about it. People are still going to buy your house. This is the common factor. People are still going to buy the house if there's an outlet that doesn't work. Right? People are still going to move forward and do it through there. If you do discover something new beforehand, you can correct it before it goes on the market. Right? And then that way you don't have to worry about it being an issue that affects your sales price. So the other thing that does, this is really important, it avoids you having to renegotiate. That's the other thing that we see all over. And I've bought properties in other areas of the country. They can offer inspections and renegotiate the price. Right? So if you have all of those up in front of you ahead of time and the buyer has them, there's no renegotiation. You know everything about your house. They made an offer subject to knowing everything about your house, right? And so that protects that as well. So and the number one reason that a purchase transaction falls apart when somebody's buying a house, number one, is they discover something new. That's number one. When somebody buys your house and they get your own inspection, they're like, oh, dryer doesn't work. I can't buy this house. I've seen stuff like that. They call it cold feet. So, right, that comes over, but they use that new discovery as a piece there. So avoiding, it avoids that. Whenever you're filling out disclosures, don't be hesitant. It's better to over-disclose than under-disclose. It's always going to protect you later. I've seen some pretty dramatic issues where a seller thought they disclosed something and they didn't. And I saw one last year that led to a $200,000 settlement in favor of the buyer because the seller forgot to mention something, didn't include something in that process, right? So that's also the guidance of proper Sherpa, a realtor that you work with, is that they should be guiding you through those forms. Should never be an instance where they sit down the packet and say, good luck, fill that out. Right? They should be guiding you as to what to do because that's what they deal with all the time. So the inspector that you choose when you do those inspections is really important because inspectors are like every other profession. 10% of them are better than everybody else, right? Inspectors are the same thing. They have reputations in the industry. People know their inspections are good. Realtors know their inspections are good, or realtors know their inspections are bad, right? And they'll have the same thing. So they'll get new inspections. So again, now you're back to that same piece. So a stronger inspector is going to help you have a more marketable property, right? Coming out there. That's the best way to put that. So, and this part is very important. I've heard this before, come through. If you're filling out disclosures, and I talk about like over disclosing, if you're filling out disclosures and a realtor tells you, don't worry about it, that's referred to as a red flag. So if somebody's telling you, don't worry about it, no, don't worry about it. You had that old plumbing leak, you had it fixed. Don't worry about it. That's a red flag. Because if something comes up and there's future problems with you're back in court, you're back in a lawsuit, and you're coming through there. So, so always just over disclose, fix it, you fixed it. If you didn't, they know about it going in, and it's a win. So that's the best thing that I can tell you on there. So any questions on that? Because I know that's boring. Yes, Jack.
How long that liability is hovering over the seller?
Basically your entire life. So it goes. There are going to be limitations, right, that come in, and I think the legal limitations. To stress, I'm not an attorney. The legal limitations are between 2 to 5 years, depending on what the item is. So coming through there, and basically negligence has to be shown, right? That you knew about it somehow and didn't disclose it into the process. Yeah, that's important. And
didn't disclose it and it shows up and they prove it was present for the sale, that's what you're responsible.
Correct. Yeah. So it's something that homes don't come with warranties from the seller, right? You can get a home warranty, but they don't come with warranties from the seller. So if something new happens or something breaks the day after, it's not the seller's responsibility, right? That's the purpose of getting inspections, right? And going through that process to understand the condition of everything. So that was a good question. Thank you. All right. Step-by-step process. Shannon, I'm going to bring you back up.
A little longer.
Isn't real estate just actually like putting a sign in front of your property holding open houses and that's it? Isn't it?
I think that's it, right? You are up.
Kelly did say that facing this general direction. All right. We're going to start at step 1, interviewing realtors with intent. Don't just go with the first person you meet or your best friend. Interview a few people because not all realtors are created equal. We have we call limited service agents and then full-time, full-service realtors. So interview with intent. Make sure you're asking all the questions. Remember, you're interviewing them for the position. See if they have a full marketing plan. What's their strategy? Are they giving direction or are they just sticking a sign in the front yard? All super important. Don't just choose a realtor based on what their price is. You have the lowest price, often you get what you pay for. We've seen that backfire in a lot of people's faces. So consider an escalation clause in the listing contract, which is basically if us as realtors do our job and we get X price over what we expect, and we're rewarded accordingly. But if we don't do our job and we shoot and get something under what you guys expect as far as sale price, then our commission drops to a lower rung. So there's actually a step process where everybody wins in the end. Then we're deciding on strategy. So ask your realtor, what do you recommend? Are we doing that as is? Are we going mid-range? Are we doing the full-blown remodel? And what are the pros and cons to every strategy? Then we're establishing the market price and the timeline. How long is that strategy going to take? Are we going to be in the market in 3 days or are we going to be in the market in 3 months? The market price, we're going to figure out a price in the beginning and then adjust if needed based on what's selling at the time when we go on the market. We're ordering, like he said, all those necessary inspections, pest, roof, and general property. And then we're making sure that we do any of those necessary repairs once we find out what's going on from the reports. Then we're completing all of those disclosures, what Keith just talked about with your realtor. Sit down, we do it over a Zoom call. We make sure you're using the appropriate terms so we keep you guys out of court. Staging and video, it takes about a week, and we like to do it a week before we come on the market so everything's current. We'll usually do photo and video like Thursday or Friday, and then by Monday, our marketing people have compiled everything, the professional website, all of the photos, the video with the drone, the floor plan, we get the whole weekend to compile all of that. And then Monday, we have a full package that we can showcase to the market. We like to go live on the MLS midweek, and we do that for a couple of reasons. The homes that came on the market the week before are sometimes taking offers on Monday or Tuesday that week. We want to wait till maybe Wednesday to bring our home on the market so we don't mess with people that just saw those homes and are offering there. We don't want to come on a Friday because we want to give people enough time to schedule their showings for the weekend. So Wednesday, we feel like is a really good day, sometimes Tuesday, but we always just assess that with the house and what's on the market at the time. Open houses. So we extend our open house availability from not just Saturday, Sunday, 1 to 4, but that first weekend we're on the market for Thursday, Friday, 4 to 7 to catch that after work crowd that maybe is out of town this weekend. And then Saturday and Sunday, instead of the 1 to 4, we do it from 12 to 5. To allow everybody time to get in there. If they have other houses that they're seeing, there's no reason to miss yours. Then that following week, we set an offer deadline if all of the activity is high. If it's not, maybe we set one for the following week. But we just gauge that case by case. We're reviewing the offers. We're letting our clients know all of the terms of the offer. Not just, this is the price, this one's the best, let's go with it. Because sometimes the terms of the highest price offer are not so great. Maybe that next one is the best. So we're really going through with the fine-tooth comb and calling the lenders, telling you guys what we know about the buyer's agents. We can really craft what a good counteroffer potentially of what the offers that receive that come in. Negotiation. So maybe you receive one offer, you don't always negotiate, but maybe there's 3 and we count the top 2. Those negotiations can take anywhere from a day to 2, but if it puts more money in your pocket, an extra day's work is no sweat off our back. We've seen it work multiple times. And again, we're understanding all of the terms, the timelines from that offer that we accept, when that closing day is, when you're going to receive your wire, what their contingencies are is the next step. If there's any contingencies for the offer, we're making sure we're following up with that buyer agent a couple of days before the contingencies are due to be removed and letting them know, hey, are we still on track for contingency removal on X day? We are destaging, packing, and getting all of your notifications set up. So for utilities, actually, you want to shut those off on the closing day. Destaging, we're making sure our stagers are not, putting holes in the wall or scratching anything on the way out. We go make sure everything was nice, clean slate for the buyer when they come in. And a lot of sellers will leave their stored items in the garage. So we're making sure everything is cleaned out of there before closing day. And the sign off. For sellers, it's a little bit different than buyers. A seller can sign off any time after the buyer has removed all of their contingencies. So if it's a non-contingent offer, you guys can sign off at any time. And that sign off is going to be in person with a mobile notary, wet signature, everything. You're seeing your final net sheet or estimated net sheet, and just signing off on everything and smooth sailing to closing day. This whole process from interviewing realtors all the way to closing day can really range depending on your timeline, but anywhere from getting the property on the market in a week to doing the full remodel. So a month to 6 months. We hold your hand through the whole process, so it seems easy here, but once you're in it, we're reminding you of all of these things.
How contingencies most often is in contingencies the buyers will have.
Yeah,
Got the mic on.
okay, I got the mic on. You're stuck with me, Jack. All right, yeah, so there's three main contingencies, property, appraisal, and loan. So property is basically all inclusive. So that's investigations, that's looking at everything, that's the neighborhood, that's the HOA, that's everything, right? That's the most powerful contingency a buyer can possess. So because they literally can come to the house and say, the color of the sky today isn't to my liking, so I'm going to decide not to buy your house, right? And they can walk away without losing anything, right? So that's the most powerful one they have. The loan and appraisal, I would say loan is probably what we're going to see the most, but appraisal is a close second. So loan is basically they're guaranteed that they can get a loan for that particular property, right? That's going to be a thing. Now, being smart ahead of time and making sure that the buyer has a pre-approval, a pre-qualification, a pre-approval, and even better that they're underwritten, that helps solidify that. Because then your protection in a loan contingency is that they don't qualify for the loan for that house, which if they're underwritten already, that's going to be a very, very, very rare chance that that's going to happen. And the other part is the appraisal. And appraisal just comes in that the bank sends out an independent person to appraise the value of the property against the purchase price, right? And when they do that, if it appraises for the value, great. It's very rare that it ever appraises over the value. Banks don't like appraisers to do that. Even if the buyer got a really good deal, they're usually not going to see this elevated appraisal. It's going to appraise right at the price, right? So we'll see that. So that's a piece there. But if it appraises under, that's where the difference is. So you can prep ahead of time and negotiate with the buyer that says, hey, this is the buffer that I want if it appraises under, that the buyer would be responsible for. But if it doesn't appraise for the value, and let's say it's $100,000 short, the buyer technically has to cover that $100,000 on top of their down payment move forward with the property, unless they have an appraisal contingency. And at that point, they can come back and say, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Seller, I'm negotiating the price of your house based on what's here. Now, you don't have to agree to it as the seller. You can walk away, right, or agree to something, right? But they have the ability to come in and say, hey, I want to renegotiate because the bank is saying what it is. So those are the main ones. And that's why if you're prepping ahead of time, try to avoid as many of those as we can.
It's fair. This must be contract, right? They
Correct.
can't just come up at the end and say, hey, how about now this, I need to check this or check that. It has to be listed in a contract.
That's correct. That's correct. There's the contract has a default day in there. Contingencies are built into the California purchase contract, just 17 days. Which is a pretty long period of time for the way that our market moves. So, but that's the default. So they are in there. But yeah, it's really important, again, to review every line and every aspect of that contract, or have your agent reviewing that and sharing it with you so you know what can they do. And what does this mean? They have 7 days for this contingency. What does that mean to me as a homeowner? What risk do I have coming into? So the strongest process is to be able to mitigate those risks. Okay. Awesome. That's a great question. Thank you. Love the questions that you have.
Questions, he's the ones here a lot. Right back.
Okay, all right, no problem at all. So, all right. So we are, we lost the key to the restroom. That's my fault. I think I left it. Okay, so everybody's stuck here. Last two things that I want to get into: effective marketing strategies and really when's the best time to sell. So I'm going to start with effective marketing strategies because this has always been a misconception, especially in our area. You put a sign in your front yard, you put the house in the market, and it's going to sell for a great price, right? Complete misconception. Exposure sells for a great price, right? Because you can have 3 people come in your house and sell for a great price, but if you have 1,000 people see it, you're probably going to sell for a great price, right? It's just basic logic. So what I see that's effective in this industry, as long as I've been here, I like to call it like land, sea, and air. A full attack onto prospective buyers, right? So you need both old school, like open houses, knocking on doors, sending out postcards, right? You need that because that goes to a certain audience, right? And you need to be online as effective as possible online. High-end videos, drone footage, good photographs, things that people are going to qualify because that's where they're going to go first anyways. But you need a balance of all of it to have the best results. When people buy a home, and this is important in your marketing, keep this in mind regardless of who you work with. When people buy a home, they're not just buying that property, they're not buying those walls. They're buying the neighborhood and the lifestyle, right? What does that neighborhood bring, right? Living in Palo Alto is different than living in Gilroy. They're going to be marketed completely different, right, as for what it is. So it's not just a property. It's not just, you see the advertisements online, 4 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, blah, 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 blah. Nobody cares. Those are criteria. That's not why they're buying the house, right? And so they're buying the house because, oh, this park is right here, or these schools are right here, or so on and so forth. So there's something to keep in mind, marketing the property, that the focus of the marketing should be neighborhood and lifestyle, right? Highlighting the benefits of that home in that area. So that's really critical. And then I'm going to be completely honest on here as well. There's a level of luck involved when your home goes in the market. It's not always that you do nothing or you do everything and you get great results, right? Or Realtor A does something much better than Realtor C. Sometimes it just happens to be that the week you're on the market, that buyer who loves that home, loves that area, happens to come to your house and brings you the best offer. So, and sometimes it's the flip side. That buyer is not here. So at that point in time, which again, going back to the story, you just wait a little bit. They'll show up, right? To come through there. But, particular buyer competition out there, are they here, are they not? What news just hit? That's the other luck too. Going on the market and then you get the news about the tariffs. And that was a rough weekend at open houses, right? So, but it's those kind of pieces. So a lot of that is going to change. And we're so here in this area, Silicon Valley in particular, we are so sensitive to headline media news and how it affects the stock market, right? Because a lot of people, their down payment comes out of the stock market. And so they're going to be edging that and what that news is. So really paying attention to that is important. So it's really just, leveraging expertise and what's going on a lot, right? Coming out of the process. There is a combination between both. But if you cover everything, you don't leave anything unturned, right? You put everything out there and get massive exposure, you know at least that you're going to be doing the best, most effective job. One of the ways that I would suggest if you were trying to qualify somebody that's selling your home is research them thoroughly as far as the exposure and what their stuff looks like. Because somebody representing somebody buying a home, that realtor who specializes in buying a home isn't the same as a realtor who specializes in selling a home. Now, there's plenty of realtors that can do both. It's a completely different process, right, coming through there. And so media, video is the largest exposure online right now. So go look at somebody's like YouTube channel and go look at the homes that they have for sale and see what views they have, right? And if you go on there and you see their YouTube channel, and here's common for a realtor, and ironically, Silicon Valley, like you can go to Tennessee and most realtors have better video usage than Silicon Valley. I haven't figured that out yet. But you can go into Silicon Valley and find a really nice house in Los Gatos that has 5 views on YouTube. 5. Right? And it's like, so what are they doing? Right? How are they exposing this? What's going through? Just as a comparison, our YouTube channel, I'll bring a link up to it at the end. Our listings have an average of 150,000, 200,000 views. Right? And that's exposure. Know you're getting out there to everybody. Right? Getting that. So pay attention to that as well. So last thing I want to get into, and then appreciate everybody getting here. We're getting right into that time, which is perfect. Last thing I want to get into is when's the best time to sell? Which is probably now, since the pandemic, the absolute hardest question to answer in this job. I can tell you everything about the market and what's happening and where it's going, and all that. I am a junkie about the market and researching that. But in our area, we don't have the typical seasons that a lot of other areas have, right? Like if you're in Chicago, Illinois, you don't sell your house in December or January, or maybe even February, right? Because nobody's coming. Nobody can get to the house. So nobody's coming, right? So you have those changes. So you'll see seasonal there. Our usual seasonal relates to school timeframes, school calendars, right? So people tend to buy when their kids aren't in school. They tend to sell when their kids aren't in school. Those are some of the biggest changes that happen. So that's going to be the biggest ones where you see that ramp up. That's why inventory ramps up in spring, summer, right? And most of the buyer activity comes along that time as well. So those are usually seasonal, and then we'll see things slow down coming into the holidays. We've seen that change since the pandemic. We've seen the fall be really strong at a time to sell, right? All of a sudden that shifted. It's been really a wild ride, and every year it's been like that. And this year again, it's the same thing because of everything that we saw that happened in the second quarter. We kind of have a stalemate, right? Sales are consistent, inventory is growing a little bit, but we're not seeing a ton of movement across the board. We're not seeing a spike in inventory. We're not seeing a spike in sales, right? Because a home seller right now, they don't have to move. And so if the conditions aren't right, they're just not putting their house to market because they have a 3% interest rate, right? And they're fine where they're at. So unless there's a life decision, they're hanging tight. So but what I'm seeing right now is when we have that interest rate change, we'll probably see a flux. Again, we're looking at mortgage applications. We're seeing all this stuff. So what usually the second quarter, which is usually the most activity, it's probably going to be the third quarter this year. It's probably going to be the most activity of the year. We're already seeing signs of that coming through. So it's kind of like spring season got pushed back. So timing really is a beast. It's just making the decision, doing when it's right for you and what makes sense for you. And again, just like you're analyzing what's for sale in the neighborhood, what's pending in the neighborhood, what's happened around there, it's the same thing. What's happening right now seasonally? When's the best time, for me to go? And we have frank conversations with people like, don't sell your house right now. Don't buy a house right now. Hold off, wait. The only thing I can tell you is don't panic. House price based on every fundamental that exists to measure housing is not going to crash. So especially here. So will it slow down? Might dip a little bit? Sure. But over time, it's still where it's at. There's no reason to panic. So coming through there. So seasonally, it's just different right now. So it really is. So it's analyzing everything that's out there. But I think this third quarter will be what the second quarter is supposed to be. We'll see some of that, which again might push off. We saw that the year of the pandemic when that got lifted, that next 6 months was wildfire even into December. Right? It's the same thing. So a lot of times it's just what varies around there. So, any other questions on that or anything? Yeah, Jack.
From your experience historically, what's the approximate time between the time when the Fed is adjusting the price, the interest rates, reflected in actual mortgage rates and the banks reacting to it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. When is there a reaction
right now to kind of an area when it has a chance of dropping?
Yeah, that's it.
For banks to react.
It's really interesting that you bring that up because I would tell you usually there is no delay. Usually it's predisposed. So when they know that the feds are going to be dropping rates, mortgage companies are usually proactive, right? And they're taking it through. So there's not a whole lot of reactiveness that comes into there. Most of the time when you see that Fed cut, reactivate, sometimes the Fed cut won't even affect housing interest rates. So the biggest things that a Fed cut affects are like credit card interest, right? Car loans, those are the ones that it really affects when it happens. So sometimes they've already built it in. And, but what it does do, and this is the part that probably leads to kind of where your question is consumers are reacting, right? So when they see a change and they see that, look how the Fed just dropped rates 0.5% or 1%, they react, they jump in at that point in time. So they usually wait for that. And that's kind of the piece. Then you're going to see a lot more competition. But I would also say when that happens, we're also going to see a lot more inventory, because at the same time, a lot of the homeowners are sitting on 3%. They're like, I don't want to pay 7%, but I'll pay 6%, right? See the same thing. So we'll see that go through. All of that is healthy. So it's all really good. So there's nothing right now. I really think the whole underlying factor of what's happened in this industry and in this market since they did the 3%, right? It pretty much bulletproofed, our area especially, because these are so affordable for a homeowner in theory, especially for this area, right? They got more equity than they've ever had. Like historically, homeowners have more equity than they have ever had, not just in dollars, but in percentage, right? And so people, our homeowners right now are in a very comfortable position. So unless they're choosing to say, well, it's time, then they don't have to. But that's where I think, again, those rates come down. It not only brings the buyers in, which we're already seeing all those applications, they're ready to come in, right? It's going to bring more sellers and opportunities. And every seller, by the way, is usually a buyer, right? So that's the same thing as well. If everybody enjoyed everything and you want to share it, first of all, we'll be here for personal Q&A if you want afterwards. Everybody's here to help you, from Farnaz to Marita to Shannon to Adam to even myself, Keith. So these are the dates of our future workshops: October 2nd, October 4th. The buyer one's always online, the 6:30 at night on a Thursday. And the seller one is both online and it's in person here. That's the website that will always update everything, the Bay Area workshops coming through there. And then the last two things, that's our YouTube channel. So if you want access to our YouTube channel, if you don't know it yet, hit that QR code to go through there. We try to keep that updated as possible. We probably post about 3 to 4 videos a week on our YouTube channel. Market stuff, seller tips, buyer tips are all up there. We are literally almost 18,000 subscribers already, over 2.5 million views. I can confidently say we are by far the most watched YouTube channel for real estate in this area by far coming through. So you're welcome to check that out to go through there. What that was. So this.
I'm watching.
Watching. Okay, you're watching it already. I love it. Okay, awesome. And we'd personally like to help you. Any questions you have, any strategies that you have, going through there, how to tailor things to your personal situation. If you're considering selling the next 6 to 12 months, it's always a good time to chat. Everybody's here to help you afterwards, to answer things and online. So we're committed. We're committed to help through, no obligation to give you information to share with you to help you on your journey. And be your Sherpas. Everybody have their Sherpa outfit on? Okay, awesome. All right. Thank you online, everybody. I appreciate everybody that was there. Thank you, everybody that's here in person. So, and see you next time.